Evening. How are you? How's your day been? Welcome back to Storytime with Community Courtyard at the Yard. Although I'm sure you can tell that we're not actually at the Yard at the moment. We're in my front room. And today we're going to be continuing. That reminds me, we are on the chapter that's entitled, even, Reflection. And we are on 8. Okay, so let's crack on straight into it. I hear the bouncing pitch of my mum's voice. That's how I talk, her defensive phrase, but her strain to bring forth English, muffled by her Ghanaian accent, suffocating every word, tells me something different. So I get up to check who she's talking to. She needs me. My dad is around, back on our sofa for another abbreviated visit, but will not help. The dreams of the East Legion keeping his eyes closed. I take the phone, I speak in a stream of consciousness. Stacked plain words, along winded sentences I feel will move things into place. I set the date for the council visit and hand the phone back. I don't return to my room. I stand to listen to the end of the conversation with my mum. My mum finally able to say goodbye politely, to see all that I've done, arms folded, satisfied. My mum hangs up, thanks me, and squats on the floor to carry on mixing her pepper with double-sided pestle grind in the mortar. I watch her, then I shout, Mikoda. She doesn't look up, only says, okay. The words swallow her laugh. 9. There was no limit to my new family. New aunties and uncles are met every day. What was supposed to be my mum and I popping in to say hello becomes by the end a concern, but we'd missed our last bus home. Between the beginning and the end of one back and forth homily, I look out of the windows, down at the kids screaming. No way to tell who the sounds are coming from. And then running around the small park between the flats, battling in the playground at its centre, jumping off the swings and balancing on the seesaw. And also, what I most want to do, standing close to the older boys talking. I need to know what it said. I walked through the words of the family and latched the door, and I run through the corridor, down the stairs and out into the sun, cooking my company of cousins, everyone Ghanaian. Slowly, I move closer to where the older boys stand and lean against the railings. A bar slipping between my bum cheeks. I realise they are not speaking English. They are speaking what I know as Ghana language. Aren't they embarrassed? Their bodies, chests in the air, rising with each response of their breath with what they're smoking. Speak out loud as their voices. One is connecting sentences with more frequency than the rest. He is telling a story. Here, Broadwater Farm, where any parked car, well, they could be the police. Where killers wipe off their fishing knives before saying, hello, auntie. Being Ghana is turning into something else. I listen, but I don't understand much. But feeling like somewhere in my chest, I was hearing everything. Then silence. All of the boys look around at each other. I prelude into a burst of words. Woba, hey. Don't mind him. Busy grot. We off to the estate. Tell me more. Let us enjoy. Who was lying? I was hearing African pride and I was hearing the truth. And then a hand on my neck pulling me back towards the flat. My uncle had seen me out of the window while smoking a cigarette. One sin revealing another, my aunt would say. But he was too late. I'd heard what I'd wanted to hear. I wanted to tell my stories too. 10. The glory of God rests on Sundays, so voices of praise have room to uplift. Gospel becomes the voice of God, so Esther Smith sang salvation for a single breath of our Saviour. These mornings still held the sound of my mum fighting through the tears, her fists in motion treating Satan as a speedball. When sent to Bath, my champion's paw was really a Goliath sculpt, with clean water splashing at my ankles as it was drained. I stepped out of the bathroom and my mum recognised that only tongues could cleanse the last of her litter. She pocketed anointing oil and I swallowed 7 seasons, even more hesitant these days, since I split one open, and the unbearable smell became the first time I questioned odour of holiness. Sometimes my friends would already be out as I trailed my mum to the bus stop, nodding at me, hoping one day I'd join them on these hot days. My mum grabbed my wrist and pulled me along. They knew better than to knock for me sometimes, knowing the time I'd get home. They sent house church messages on MSN. But as post-pays conversations filled our rented hall, I would receive them all too late. 11. The flat speaks as its night noises, and she responds with her own absent-minded murmurings. The kettle bubbles and the rising boil sounds and brings to mind the waters of Akragana, a memory of something she never experienced. When will she go back and stand before the tide she imagines as a child? Waters that ignore boundaries and smother sands that eventually lead back to the skyscrapers, distance her and her imagined. The Ghana Gardens, the city of Kumasi. And you'll have to apologise, sorry, if I say any of these words wrong. My pronunciation is not awesome. It's too traditional for a young mind turned into Western standards of living. The tea is too hot, but she is acclimatised, feeling only a familiar sensation, forgetting to register its pain. It's 4:30. The bus comes in 2 minutes later, but she'd rather be late than risk toppling over. No one would help her up in the morning mist or the lights of her own home. The school in which she works is quiet. You'd never know children run up and down these corridors. So attentive is she to the floor, like wiping food from her child's face, showing its gentleness she always given but never received. Gospel hums in her throat. The words never coming for fear that a teacher might pass and think that she's unfit for work. It's been 20 years, and she's weary. The early morning wind, feeling like a breeze, visiting the edge of a cliff. Her humming is in sync with her thoughts. Cleaning shit from toilets transforms her arms, raised to the sky, praising at the feet of an almighty God. Through everything, there sits her saviour. She's finished by 7:30, and as she walks out of the building, a teacher says, "Hello, are you on your way?" And she smiles. No words. A gentle hum is enough to think all day. 12. Its mouth spoke with small squeaks like a sound from bubble popping, with a weak peep. And I saw it from a distance the dimensions in my rooms wouldn't allow. No sparrow had swooped in, stepped in stately with sandy feet. So I was sure that what I saw came from wherever defined as outdoors. No face, but I was aware of one, covered by the blurred walls between realities, as it seemed to have pushed its beak through. It was motionless for hours, still blinking frequently, but I was sure every time I closed my eyes that it drew closer, but kept the same distance. It followed me from country care to a city where light should have been obscured, polluted its watching eyes by the lamps that forced us to look for sparkles in the sea. One early night, when sapphire patches surrounded the colour of coals forging in the sky, it returned to me, appearing in my room with its mouth working out a time with the frequency of its peeps, and a bush brow now visible to show the range of its furrows. It was incensed by my leaving and not saying a word, but it's always been this way. My words unable to leave my mouth as the things played, the high-pitched sound of my imagination. That was the last night I saw it. At daybreak, as I lifted myself onto my elbow, and my lashes fluttered away my fancies, I saw a mousetrap covered in peanut butter, and its victim, mouth closed. "13. Apologies there, I thought I'd completely lost my page. The first friend I allowed in my house ran back to tell our class I was poor. They saw my mum and dad's mattress lying on the uncarpeted floor, homeless, unsupported, the framework having fallen apart, the sheets seemingly to drag along like a dropped flag, gliding through an ocean of scattered clothes. When we bickered in school, my living conditions were his weapon of choice. Although the house didn't smell of spiced curry powder or Maggie, The white boys of the area instead mocked the visible tinge that black had stained the bottom of our inner curtains. They were there when we moved in, and I suspect it was this unwillingness to change them maintained by the financial difficulties that led the old woman from 5 doors down to knock at ours and inquire about her friend. In our garden, we had a bomb shelter, fascinating to me, but really a reminder of how soon the house might crumble. Suitcases, longing for their promised flight to Ghana, waited patiently next to little bags full of sardines that kept guests company in our living room, distracting them from the black mold that gathered in the corners of our ceiling. Still, nobody left our home without a story of relative poverty to relay. The truth is, we were all black working class, but pretending we couldn't relate. 14. My dark skin saved my dad from child services, but no one saved me. My mum's eyes were always elsewhere, too out of reach to call me into something akin to sympathy. Her eyes were dry as they fell on the floor. Fingers down a neglected window, down my childhood photos, the ones taken by door-to-door photographers. A blue background I now see as a sea I could mercifully push my younger self into. Connecting slaps like feints and jabs, worked up by confidence. More coming in, as if encouraged by an imagined applause. Confusion had left me, leaving only lies. I tell myself about who I was. I must be a bad boy. I must deserve it. I must have done something wrong. The knocks on my head are father's premonition. My dad, he walked with his head low, hands in his pockets, not even seeing the pavement. And I wondered what he thought about, aside from the punitive ways to communicate with me. One evening, I followed him out, with my head still in my itchy state of pain, but followed his knuckles. As I walked and watched, stepping into the long shadow he cast, I thought he'd stroll out into the road. So unseen, he looked so uncaring. Trees behind the houses swayed with the wind, like giants in the darkness, peeking around homes to see if he was okay. I felt sympathy. I watched him cross the road and enter the shop. I ran home when I saw him making his way back. Walking into the living room, he looked down at me, his eyes filled with my presence. I kept my focus on the screen, on Kanan and Kale and Coolio. He threw something into my lap as the last nick of the show's theme tune echoed out. Bar of chocolate. A peace offering or manipulation disguised as guilt. I began to eat it. I broke off a piece and I offered it to him, but he spat it back. What's it for you? You make sure you eat it all. 15. The pirate film we were watching mirrored by my half posture among these white bodies is a tool. The opening scene begins with singing and stretched arms, anticipating the embrace of the good life. Then the spectacle, the white upper class, father, rector, whatever on the keys, enunciating every word of a rap written to help shake people like them off. Drum machines and keyboards are replaced by the more civilized piano, and voices full of money sing in unison the coarse lyrics, moved but over by their gentle diction and intonations. The black nerd is replaced by white intellectuals, keys on the piano unlocking racism I never even knew existed. We were at a friend's house and his dad, hands worked to black by the grease of the motors, sat with us, a break from the MOTs and overcharging OAPs, complaining of the cataracts and not the carburetors. The opening scene continues with Ferrero's chorus being sung by members of the church known for exorcisms and civilized missions in Africa. A line is said, removed from irony because of a past pail, hands tightened in a noose. The Wayans brothers, too unsophisticated to realize the truth. The dad amongst us laughed and licked his brandished teeth, satisfied on his break without having something to eat. I saw his pupil in the corner of his eye, so strained it nearly spilled out like mascara. He called me a nigger without opening his mouth. The movie played on, and I wondered what was said when I wasn't sitting in this house. 16. How much pride did she feel removing my belt with one hand, seeing my jeans drop like the trite comedy. Oh, that wasn't a hard word. I should have been able to pronounce that. With an erection on the way, but blood not knowing exactly what to do. I couldn't take my eyes off the cracked plaster where my mirror used to be. As she rubbed and squeezed, kept her knickers on, but tried to remove my boxers while I forced my body up against a wall. I wanted her, but not like this. As the kids ran past the bathroom giggling and looking through the keyhole, an older voice moving them on. There was less of me for her to hold on to in her hand, and we rubbed on until I opened my eyes. Both of us now sitting on the top of the stairs, in love and enjoying the view. She drew red crayon on her lip and asked me to be her boyfriend. Between kisses, I looked around for my belt. Oh, my mum can't know I've lost anything today. I didn't want to pull away, and soon I forgot. But the girl I remember is my mum asking me who she was between strikes from the belt, but was to replace the one that I lost. What did you think of that chapter? It was good, wasn't it? I like the way that some of the words kind of go in and out. There are lines that have a natural rhythm to them. It feels really interesting. It feels like you've got this whole chapter, but with just like one section. If I show you what I mean, so you can physically visualize what I'm actually reading. So, for example, for me to get really close, you can see that the chapter 13 is just one paragraph. So the paragraphs are really short, but they're quite punchy, aren't they? I think if it's okay with you, I'm going to leave it there because we're end of that kind of section. And tomorrow we'll pick up on the chapter that's called Change. When I'm having a look at the book, it doesn't actually say how many chapters or how many sections, but there are let's look, 115 pages, and we are on page 41. So we're almost halfway through. So I imagine in our first week of story time, there's a chance you might get through the whole book in the week, and that would be really good. Now, if there's a book that you would like to listen to, then please drop me a line, send me a message, or write a comment so that we can pick it up and we can share that book together. Story time is just a really nice way of relaxing after you've had a hard day at school, a hard day at work, a hard day at home. And it's a good way to kind of share things because some of the books that we're going to be reading, lots of other people have read too. So it gives you a good thing to talk about with your friends, with your parents. But more importantly, it's another way to kind of de-stress, relax after what is increasingly a really pressured world. So last week was Mental Health Awareness Week, and that's part of why we're setting up our story time, because we know that listening to people share stories is really good because you don't have to do anything, do you? I'm here doing the hard work, sometimes pronouncing the words really well and sometimes getting a bit stuck, but that's okay because we're all like that. And all you've got to do is have me on in the background, have a listen and think to yourself, do I like this book? Is it the kind of book I'd read? And if it is, then have a look at it there. I'm sure that Derek has done lots of other books and it'd be worth checking them out. Okay, right, have a lovely evening and I'll see you again tomorrow. And don't forget,